I never thought betrayal could wear such a charming smile. If you had asked me years ago who William was, I would have told you he was the kind of man who could light up a room just by walking into it. He had that effortless confidence, the kind that made you want to lean in closer to believe every word that slipped from his lips. And I did. God, I believed him with everything I had. When we first met, it felt like a dream stitched out of small coincidences. A rainy afternoon, an overcrowded cafe, two strangers forced to share a table because there was nowhere else to sit. I remember laughing nervously as I clutched my coffee, apologizing for bumping his arm. He smiled, said it was no problem, and within minutes we were talking like old friends. He told me about his job, his family, his ambitions, and listened to me as though every word I spoke was a secret worth treasuring. That day, when I walked out into the drizzle with his number saved in my phone, I felt something shift inside me. It was the kind of spark you don't question, the kind you want to protect at all costs. And from that moment on, William became the center of my world. Our relationship grew fast. The kind of fast that makes people whisper that it won't last, but you're too busy floating to care. He brought flowers to my office, left little notes tucked into my bag, and cooked dinner when I came home late. He laughed at my silly jokes, held my hand across restaurant tables, and told me I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. For once I felt chosen. I felt safe. When he proposed, it wasn't some grand spectacle with flashing cameras and orchestrated drama. It was just us at home on a quiet evening. He knelt down with a trembling hand and a ring that caught the soft glow of the lamp. And he said words I'll never forget. Alice, I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered yes, and in that moment, I was convinced nothing could break us, but I didn't know then how perfect lies are told at first. Everything seemed normal. We were planning the wedding, discussing venues, picking out color schemes, and imagining the home we'd one day build together. William was attentive, almost overly so. He'd shower me with affection, make me laugh when I was stressed, wrap me in his arms, and promise me forever. To the world, we were the perfect couple. And I believed it. I wanted to believe it. But little cracks began to form, ones I brushed aside at first. A strange late-night text he quickly dismissed. A business trip that seemed unusually vague. A perfume scent on his shirt that wasn't mine. He always had an answer ready, always delivered it with such calm certainty that I felt foolish for even questioning him. You're imagining things, Alice, he'd say, pulling me close. Don't let your mind ruin something so beautiful. And I'd nod, ashamed, convincing myself that my love was stronger than my doubts. Still, those cracks widened. I noticed the way his phone never left his side, even when he went to the bathroom. I noticed how distracted he seemed at dinners, how his smiles sometimes didn't quite reach his eyes. And though part of me screamed that something was wrong, another part clung desperately to the dream I didn't want to lose. I told myself he loved me. I told myself that if I just ignored the shadows creeping in, they would fade away. But shadows don't fade, they grow. The day everything changed started like any other. William kissed me goodbye, said he was heading to a late meeting, and promised he'd be home before midnight. Something in his tone felt off, but I tried to bury it beneath trust. Hours later, though, as I tidied the house, his laptop buzzed with a message. Normally, he kept it locked tight, but this time it was open. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was just carelessness, but I saw it. The words on the screen weren't meant for me. They were meant for her. Her name was Lydia, and the message was simple, almost cruel in its casualness. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? My heart stopped. I felt the blood rush to my ears, my hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the laptop. I read the message again and again, hoping I was mistaken, hoping it was some kind of misunderstanding. But then another one appeared, this time from William. Soon, I'll make up an excuse. You know, I can't stay away. It felt like the floor gave way beneath me. The world I had so carefully built, the love I had poured myself into, crumbled in an instant. My chest ached as though something inside me had shattered beyond repair. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the laptop across the room, but all I could do was stand there in stunned silence. He came home later that night, humming softly as though nothing was wrong. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the stranger hiding behind the man I thought I knew. I forced a smile, forced laughter at his jokes, forced myself to act like everything was fine. But inside, a storm was raging. In the days that followed, I became an actress in my own life. I collected evidence quietly, screenshots of messages, whispers of phone calls, little details he thought he had hidden. I studied him the way a hunter studies prey, memorizing his patterns, his excuses, his lies. And all the while, I played the role of the loving fiancé, smiling, nodding, waiting. But with each passing day, the storm inside me grew louder. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My mind replayed every moment, every lie, every time he kissed me after being with her. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it poisons your memories. It makes you question every smile, every word, every promise that the breaking point came on a golden afternoon. I left work early, something pulling me toward the city park where we used to take walks together. And there, beneath the oak tree where he once told me I was his forever, I saw him. William, my William. Only he wasn't mine anymore. He was with Lydia, holding her hand, laughing the way he used to laugh with me. It felt like my soul caught fire. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat as I watched them. She touched his arm, he leaned closer, and in that moment, I knew. There was no more denial, no more excuses. This was real. This was betrayal laid bare in the sunlight. I didn't confront him then. I walked away silently, my steps heavy, my heart numb. But as I walked, a strange calm settled over me. The decision was made. I wasn't going to beg for answers or cry for apologies. No, I was going to take back my power in a way he'd never forget. Asterisk that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the image of him and Lydia under that oak tree. His laughter still rang in my ears, but it wasn't the sound of the man I loved. It was the sound of a liar, a man who thought he could live two lives and never be caught. I felt the tears burn at first, but then something unexpected rose up in me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was resolved. I turned to the empty space beside me, the space where William should have been, and whispered to myself, no more. From that night on, everything I did was deliberate. I smiled when he walked into the room. I kissed him when he left for work. I asked about his day, listened to his excuses, and nodded at his lies. To him, I was still the same Alice, sweet, naive, trusting. But beneath the surface, I was planning. Every glance, every word, every gesture was part of the mask I wore while I prepared for the moment he'd never see coming. The evidence piled up quickly. More late-night texts, more sudden work emergencies, receipts in his pockets for dinners I never attended. I saved them all, tucked away in a folder he would never find. Each piece of proof was like a brick, and brick by brick, I was building the fire that would consume the life he thought was uncheckable. There was a part of me that wanted to scream at him, to throw the truth in his face and demand why. But another part of me knew that words wouldn't be enough. Betrayal this deep didn't deserve simple arguments or slammed doors. It deserved something unforgettable, something that would leave a scar on his perfect little world. I found myself standing in our bedroom one evening, staring at his side of the closet. Rows of neatly pressed shirts, carefully polished shoes, and then his wedding suit, the one he had chosen with such care, the one he had told me would make him look like the luckiest man alive when I walked down the aisle. My fingers brushed over the fabric, smooth and expensive, a symbol of everything he had promised me, and that's when the idea struck me at first. I shook my head, laughed bitterly at myself for even thinking it, but the thought wouldn't leave. It grew stronger with each passing day until it became the only plan that made sense. If he could set fire to my trust, then I would set fire to the one thing he valued most, his image, his pride. The illusion of control he wore like armor. The days crawled by as I prepared. He grew bolder, thinking I was blind. He whispered into his phone late at night, forgetting I was only a room away. He left for meetings with his hair perfectly styled, his shirt freshly pressed, his cologne lingering in the air. And each time he walked out that door, I smiled sweetly and wished him luck. All while the storm inside me burned hotter, I chose my moment carefully. It had to be perfect. He was leaving for another work trip, his suitcase already packed, his suit carefully hanging in the garment bag by the door. I watched him kiss my forehead, his lips soft but empty, and tell me he'd miss me. I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I smiled, told him to have a safe trip, and watched as he walked out, blissfully unaware that his world was about to change forever. The house was silent after he left. My heart pounded in my chest, but my hands were steady. I walked to the closet, pulled out the suit, and laid it across the bed. It gleamed in the soft light, sharp and pristine, a cruel reminder of the life he had dangled in front of me like a prize. I opened the window, letting the cool night air rush in. In the distance, I could hear the faint sounds of the city, cars, laughter, life moving on. And there I was, standing over the symbol of our broken future. Holding the matchbox I had hidden away days earlier, my fingers trembled as I struck the first match. The flame flickered, small but alive, and for a moment, I hesitated. Could I really do this? Was I truly ready to let go of everything we had built, everything I had dreamed of? But then I remembered. I remembered Lydia's name on his phone. I remembered his hand in hers at the park. I remembered every lie he told me, every time he made me feel like I was crazy for doubting him. And just like that, the hesitation vanished. I lowered the match to the edge of the suit. The fabric caught quickly, the flame licking upward, spreading with hungry determination. Within seconds, the suit was alive with fire, the room filling with the acrid scent of burning cloth. I stepped back, watching as the flames devoured every stitch, every seam, every thread of the future he had promised me. It was more than fabric burning. It was betrayal itself. Turning to ash before my eyes, the fire alarm shrieked, smoke curling toward the ceiling, but I didn't care. I opened the front door, letting the smoke billow out into the night, and stood there in the doorway with my arms crossed. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with release. With freedom, I didn't have to wait long. William came rushing back minutes later, his face pale as he saw the smoke. He stormed inside, his eyes darting around until they landed on the smoldering remains of his precious suit. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Alice, what have you done?" I turned to him, calm, steady, a strange serenity settling over me. "I burned it," I said simply, "just like you burned us." He froze, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled for words. For the first time, William, the man who always had an answer, always had a lie ready, was speechless. And it was beautiful. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft hiss of the last embers dying out. He dropped to his knees by the ashes, his hands trembling as though he could piece it back together. But there was no suit to save, just as there was no us to save. I watched him, and for the first time in months, I felt no pain, no longing. No heartbreak. Only clarity. This was the end. Asterisk. William's hands hovered over the ashes, trembling as though he could scoop up what was left and stitch it back into the life he'd ruined. His voice cracked when he finally spoke, raw and desperate. Alice, why would you do this? I tilted my head, studying him the way you study a stranger who just wandered into your home. Why? I repeated, my voice calm, almost eerily so. Because for once, I wanted you to feel what it's like when something you love is set on fire. His eyes darted to mine, wide, searching, pleading. Alice, please. This isn't you. You're not. You're not cruel like this. I almost laughed. No, William. I wasn't cruel. I was kind. I was loyal. I was blind. But you turned me into this. You created the fire. He scrambled to his feet, his hands reaching out for me, but I stepped back, folding my arms across my chest. The smell of smoke still clung to the air, mixing with the sharp sting of his cologne, and it made me want to gag. Listen to me, he said, his voice breaking. I made mistakes, yes, but it didn't mean anything. She didn't mean anything. You're the one I love. You're the one I want to marry. Don't. I cut him off, my tone sharper than I intended. Don't stand there and spit out words you've already poisoned. Love? Marriage? You threw those away the second you touched her? His jaw clenched, his eyes brimming with tears he couldn't hold back anymore. I had never seen him cry, not once in all the years we'd been together. He had always been composed, always in control. But now, standing in the smoke of his own downfall, he looked small, weak. Alice, I swear I'll fix this, he whispered hoarsely. I'll cut her off. I'll change. Just don't leave me. Don't walk away. I stared at him long and hard until the silence became unbearable. Then I said the words I had been holding inside for weeks. You already lost me, William. You just didn't notice when it happened. The truth hit him harder than the flames ever could. His shoulders slumped, his lips trembled, and he sank down onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. He was breaking right in front of me, but there was no satisfaction in it. No joy. Just the hollow realization that the man I had loved was gone, and what remained was nothing but ashes, just like the suit at his feet. I turned toward the door, my coat hanging from the hook where I had left it. I slipped it on slowly, deliberately, my movements steady while inside my heart raced. Each button I fastened felt like another chain snapping, another tie to him dissolving into the air. Behind me, his voice cracked again. Please, Alice, don't leave me like this. Don't walk away. I looked back one last time. His eyes were red, his face streaked with tears, his body shaking as if the weight of his lies had finally come crashing down on him. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't the man who had proposed to me on that quiet night. This wasn't the man who once brought me flowers and promised me forever. That man had died the first time he chose her over me. All that was left now was William, the liar, the coward, the betrayer, and I had no room for him in my life anymore. This isn't my home, I said softly. Not anymore. I opened the door and stepped out into the night air. It was cold, biting against my skin, but it felt fresher than it had in months. Behind me, I could hear his sobs, muffled by the closing door, swallowed by the silence of the house. I didn't look back. Not once. The days that followed were strange, almost dreamlike. I stayed with a friend, someone who understood the power of silence, who gave me space to breathe, to think, to heal. Each morning, I woke without the sound of his lies. Each evening, I rested without the weight of his betrayal pressing down on my chest down at first. The quiet felt foreign. I caught myself reaching for my phone, expecting his messages, his excuses, his empty promises. But as the days stretched into weeks, the quiet became comforting. It wasn't loneliness, it was peace. William, meanwhile, began to unravel. He called, texted, emailed, each message more frantic than the last. I miss you. I'm sorry. Please come home. We can fix this. I deleted them all. Each unanswered call was like a stone added to the wall I was building between us. Then came the stories. Friends whispered about how people at his office had begun to notice. His long lunches, his late nights, the cracks in his perfect facade. The colleagues who once admired him began to talk behind his back, to question his character. His reputation, the thing he valued most after his pride, was slipping through his fingers just like I had. And Lydia? She disappeared. She had no interest in standing beside a man whose lies had been dragged into the light. She wanted the thrill, the secrecy, the forbiddens. But once the scandal spread, once his world began to crumble, she walked away without looking back. He lost her just as quickly as he lost me. I heard from someone who saw him sitting alone at the cafe where we first met, staring at the door as though waiting for someone who would never arrive. His hair was unkempt, his suit wrinkled, his once perfect smile replaced by the hollow stare of a man who had destroyed everything with his own hands. And still, a part of me expected to feel triumph, to feel the satisfaction of revenge well served. But the truth? I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry anymore, either. What I felt was nothing. And there is no emptiness more powerful than the kind that comes when you finally let go. Because revenge, I realized, isn't just about fire and ashes. It isn't about watching someone beg or crumble. True revenge is walking away and knowing they can no longer touch you. It's reclaiming your freedom, your peace, your life. William had begged. He had wept. He had broken. But I didn't bend. I didn't return. And slowly, step by step, I began to build a life without him. A life where my laughter wasn't shadowed by lies. A life where my trust wasn't something to be played with. A life that was mine and mine alone. In the weeks after I left, I kept waiting for the ache to swallow me whole. I thought I would crumble under the weight of everything he had done, of everything I had lost. And yes, there were moments of grief, nights when I curled up in bed, replaying every memory, asking myself why I wasn't enough, why he had chosen her lies over my love. But even in those moments, there was something stronger beneath the pain. It was quiet, steady, uncheckable. It was freedom. I didn't realize how much of myself I had given up until I was away from him. I started doing small things I hadn't noticed I'd stopped enjoying. I cooked meals just for me, not worrying about whether he'd like them. I read books late into the night, losing myself in stories instead of waiting for his key to rattle in the lock. I walked through the park alone, no longer haunted by the sight of him and Lydia, but comforted by the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, by the laughter of strangers passing by. Slowly, I felt myself return. Not the Alice who had once believed in William's promises, but the Alice I had forgotten, strong, independent, full of dreams that had nothing to do with him. Meanwhile, William's life began to collapse in ways I could never have orchestrated. His perfect facade was cracking, and everyone around him could see it. At work, his charm wasn't enough to mask his mistakes. He missed deadlines, snapped at colleagues, and showed up late to meetings. The man who once commanded every room now sat in the corner, his shoulders hunched, his eyes dim. Mutual friends told me about the gossip swirling around him. People who once envied his life now shook their heads, whispering about his downfall. He had everything, they said. How could he throw it all away? And the truth was simple, because he thought he would never get caught. Because he thought people, like me, would always forgive. But forgiveness was something he would never receive from me. I didn't respond to his calls anymore. At first, they were constant, desperate pleas. Then they became angry demands, as if he still believed he had control. But as the weeks turned into months and I stayed silent, the messages changed again. They grew hollow, resigned, the words of a man who knew he had lost the only thing that had ever truly mattered. And Lydia? She vanished from his life completely. She wasn't there when his world burned down around him. She wasn't there when he sat alone in that cafe, waiting for someone who would never show. She wasn't there when he realized he had nothing left but his own guilt. She had taken what she wanted and left him in ruins. I used to imagine that moment, the one where he realized what he had lost. I thought it would fill me with joy, with satisfaction. But when it finally came, all I felt was peace. Because I had learned that revenge wasn't about watching him suffer. It wasn't about the ashes of a suit or the tears he cried. It was about reclaiming myself. And I had done that one evening. I found myself back in the park. The same park where I had once stood frozen, watching him with Lydia. The oak tree was still there, tall and strong, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. For a moment, I just stood there, remembering the storm that had once raged inside me. But now, the memory didn't hurt. It didn't cut me open. It was just a memory, nothing more. I sat on a bench, breathing in the cool air, and for the first time in so long, I smiled without effort. Not because of anyone else, not because of promises, but because of me. William had lost me. He had lost the future we planned, the trust I gave so freely, the home we built together. And he would spend the rest of his life knowing that he had destroyed it all with his own hands. But me, I had gained something far greater. I had gained myself, and sometimes that is the sweetest revenge of all. When I look back now, I realize that betrayal has a way of breaking you open, of shattering the pieces you thought were unbreakable. But it also has a way of showing you what you're made of. I learned that I was stronger than I ever believed. I learned that I could walk through fire and come out on the other side. Not untouched, but reborn for a long time. I thought love meant holding on, forgiving, giving second chances. Even when my hurt screamed for release. I thought loyalty meant sacrificing my own peace just to keep someone else comfortable. But I was wrong. True love, the kind that matters, starts with loving yourself enough to walk away when someone shows you they can't be trusted. William will always remember the day he lost me, the day his world turned to ashes. But I will remember the day I chose myself, the day I stepped into freedom, the day I realized my worth was never tied to his lies. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let someone else's betrayal define your value. You are not the lies they told. You are not the promises they broke. You are not the tears they caused. You are more. You are stronger. You are worthy of love that doesn't come with conditions. And when you finally choose yourself, when you finally walk away from the ones who tried to break you, you'll discover what I did. That the greatest justice isn't watching them fall. The greatest justice is rising so high they can never touch you again, because in the end, revenge isn't fire or ashes or even tears. The greatest revenge is freedom. And that, more than anything, is my victory.